All right, guys, lots of activity in the marketplace at the moment, particularly post budget. But we did want to talk with you about leasing activity in commercial with business, how it's going. Quite interesting what we're seeing. Stay tuned.
I'm the ringleader, so listen up.
Josh Wapshot, the real estate economist. How are you this morning?
Good, Mr. Novak. How you going?
Good, good. So, for people that may not know, real estate agent, residential, commercial, uh, you've been doing it for how long?
Or over,
3 years.
over, yeah, almost, yeah. Yeah, it's good. It's
Well,
flying.
it's
Time's flying when
flying.
you're having fun.
And we're working in a team of 50 in the northern beaches of Sydney. I'm the principal of the agency and been an agent for over 30 years. And this morning, we want to share with you our insights on what we're seeing in the commercial market, which is really interesting. So, you wanted to talk about this one today, Josh. Why?
Well, it's just been, it's surprisingly and a good surprise. It's been extremely active, and it's not one segment in particular. There is so many different businesses that I'm dealing with at the moment. From probably the start of the year, there's been a mix of vets, churches, trades, scientists, gyms, aquariums. There really is no particular market. Segments of 40,000 all the way up to $300,000 a year. And I
Wow.
just thought, yeah, with all the doom and gloom you get in the headlines, it's really exciting to see, the group, the boots on the ground, your commercial, businesses moving, upscaling locations, or starting brand new cafes and things like that as well up at Newport. So, generally when you start to see some activity at that scale, it works its way up, generally to then investors starting to see this movement in the market with rental, because that's a big part of your commercial investment. So I'm hoping that we talk about this morning about the awesome businesses going into these new spaces, but also to give any of our investors that watch a little bit of a heads up that, especially post budget with commercial still being able to be negatively geared, um, and with the mix of tenants really poking their eyes above the water, I think this could be early tail signs for a bit of a headwind in the commercial market, which is probably, sort of struggled and started recovering over recent years. So we could be in for some fun.
You're not just spruiking.
No, definitely not. Definitely not. No, it's I
It
mean,
what because it's when's a good time to buy as a real estate agent? Oh, always, but
yeah,
you know what I mean. Like we're always positive about stuff, but I've got to say, like over the last 2 years, the last quarter has probably seen the greatest activity within our office. Now we're quite a strong commercial office for the Northern Beaches. There's only 4 agents that are actually operating in commercial.
mm,
Particularly, there's only two that are doing residential and commercial three. Um, so there's not out of 180 real estate agencies, there's not a lot that actually do commercial industrial proper. Um, and that's what we're seeing at the moment, which is really interesting. I think
it
maybe
is.
people, Josh, are just are too sick of waiting. For leasing, they're like, you know what, I was going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm sick of waiting for this or that, or whatever, interest rate rises or whatever's happening. Let's just do it.
And that's the big thing, Mark. Like I think the probably the most important aspect in a market at the moment is sentiment amongst whether it be your
Number
buyers,
one, I
your
agree.
tenants,
Yeah,
and seeing that resilience in this type of
yeah,
market where people are going, you know what, stuff it, let's run it, let's give it a go. This is my vision. I'm going to make
yeah.
this work. That's what I love to
Well
hear,
said.
and
Well,
seeing it across all businesses. Not, like I said, your churches to your veterinary clinics to your trade up at warehouses at Seven Rodborough Road,
dentists. Yeah,
dentists. Yeah,
and
it's just everywhere.
And I think it's also what you said about sentiment. I think it's probably the number one metric. And I think it's
Mm,
the number one metric that can't truly be measured. Like you can't go take a pulse on someone's metric. Um, and if you don't feel good, you don't get out of bed. You ain't getting nothing done that day. So that sentiment on how you feel or how people are feeling in general, I think so important out there. And we've had petrol crisis, we've had Christmas, we've had end of year, we've had Easter, we've had budget. It just feels like there was just one thing jammed into the next thing, jammed into the next thing, jammed into the next thing. It was just really easy for people to say, "No, I'll do it later."
mm.
And it's probably the time now when people are going, you know what? I've been saying this for like a year or two or 6 months or whatever, or three. I'm doing this.
Yeah, definitely. And it also sort of feels like, after, if you take in the last couple of years, there's been sort of, like you said, head knock after head knock. And it's almost been like, you know what, stuff it, this can't stop me. They've almost
Yeah,
seen the
got to
negative
get done.
impact and things come good. I can do this. I
Yep.
can, I can, I can push through these times. And when times are good, if you can survive during that tough time, generally you do quite well, or those resilient businesses perform.
Yeah. Lisa reckons our team is unrivaled in commercial.
Well, yeah, there's definitely with those barbecues we hold and the level of effort, and as well, guys, like we get the flexibility and beauty as agents at Novak to list everywhere. So you've got an idea of what's happening up Newport, Avalon, all the way to the city. So that whole stretch across the northern beaches, lots of different property types. So that's something that I love, and something that's been able to give me the opportunity to deal with all these businesses, speak to the owners, see how they're feeling, see how their business works, and just carry them through that journey of finding their new premises, because it's a lot of work these days, especially with council and change of uses, and it's a
All
big
that
juggle.
stuff.
Yeah,
Do you
yeah.
think, Josh? Do you think that we're saying with leasing activity for commercial exploding, it's definitely doing that with residential as well. Do you
Mm.
think there's a supply issue there that actually helps the leasing activity explode as well, as in, i.e., they're not building a lot of this stuff. It's hard to get land that can take commercial zoning or industrial zoning. Do you think that less people can get the money to buy their own premises for their business, so they're leasing their own premises for their business, or is it, apart from which was spoken about sentiment, spoken about the economy, do you think there's any supply and demand sort of stuff that's behind that as well? I might be putting words into your mouth. Sorry.
No, no, but
Yeah.
a good point, Mark, because generally, like we see developers at the moment, even in the market, are failing to get the square meter rates that they need, and they're generally commercial square meter rates, generally almost sort of half that. When you're selling brand new. So for developers, yes, it's hard for them to supply the product and sell it. And then generally when we are seeing these big developments, like the Casa del Mar, for example, that's next to us down in DY, you're only getting a new strip of shops along that bottom shop front there, with the majority of the focus being on residential. So I
200,
definitely
270, 270 units versus 8 shops.
exactly right. And that's what we're seeing. And
A lot.
even in Brookvale, like Brookvale, where you've got a lot of tightly held pockets there, where whether they're owners or tenants, generally they don't move. So and if they don't move, generally these buildings are a lot of in generally older conditions. So we actually have seen some really big tenants that are out on the lookout for the northern beaches, but for newer quality, and that larger scale, which I think we're in short supply of in the northern beaches. Wouldn't you say, Mark?
I would, yeah. And look, for anyone who's got a vacant property at the moment, I know we're saying commercials exploded, but it's a really good indicator to see that uptick in the marketplace. So, particular, we've got all the clients at the moment that they're saying, why haven't you rented mine out yet? Uh, that are watching this. Well, I'm feeling it's coming. It's come. So that positivity is now coming through. So that take up. So if you look at rental increases over the last 10 years for commercial, it's probably gone maybe the other way a little bit. I don't think that sector's had a big uptick with rent increase.
Yeah, definitely right. I think that's why we're sort of having this chat this morning is that, we're seeing the early signs of this starting to tick over and change.
Yeah,
A lot of the sites that I've spoken about that have leased in the last quarter of this year were sites that were on the market for up to 12 months, some more, some with multiple agents on the same property. So,
yeah,
I think those sort of results are telltale signs that things are slowly moving in the right direction. And it's the early bird gets the worm sort of scenario. So I'm thinking this will continue to improve and only get better for the commercial sector, especially as that level of investment or funds that was proportioned for the residential market starts tickling its way over to the commercial space. Because in terms of residential units brand new, there's not a lot of supply or projects that are in line for completion in the northern beaches. So you really only have to turn to the commercial market, which we've got, the epicenter of the economy in northern beaches, Brookvale itself, just next
it's all
door.
there. It's all there. Thank you very much, Mr. Rapshot, for your recent reporting on commercial on the northern beaches.
Yeah, it's. I love this stuff. So it's awesome to hear, awesome to speak about, and thank you for your time this morning, Mark, and thank you everyone. Happy to help.
I hope this has helped people out there.
Hopefully.
Take care. See
See
ya.
you guys.